Hey everybody, it's Ken here, and appreciate you guys sending all your questions in on Instagram and Facebook and TikTok and all the different social medias and LinkedIn. So we take a look at those questions every single week and kind of decide which ones would be great for podcasts, which ones would be great for videos. And so I picked 4 questions today that I thought were really, really good that all of you might really, really enjoy. And so the first question is, why are cap rates given so much attention if I practice a buy and hold strategy so I'm not in the market to sell? And assuming you are able to cover your debt and cash flow, which makes sense, why do they even matter, or do they not even matter? So this is a very good question. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just talk to you a little bit about how we approach cap rates. And so first of all, I think cap rates, for a lot of you people who don't know what they are, they're called capitalization rates. And essentially, it's just the price that you pay divided by the NOI, or the net operating income, which of course is income minus expenses. And so what you're trying to do is you're trying to buy properties at a higher cap rate or a higher capitalization rate, which means that your price that you're paying is lower than something that has a lower cap rate. So you're always looking at, kind of where cap rates are. For those of you who don't completely understand them, I suggest you take a look and try to understand them. So cap rates for us are just more or less anything less than a barometer of what's happening in the marketplace. So let me give you an example. So on the outside of a particular town, we'll just pick Dallas, for example. You're going to find in the rural areas, kind of a little further away from the core of the downtown Dallas area, cap rates are going to be a little bit more. In other words, they're going to be a little bit higher. So you're going to pay a little bit less on the outside of town. This isn't always the case, but it's generally the case. And what you're going to find is that cap rates are generally lower in downtown core areas. So a lot of times cap rates have a lot to do with kind of what the market's doing at the moment. So if you have a city core where it's completely vacant and there's, a lot of the office buildings are vacant and nobody wants to live down there, like the city of Phoenix is actually going through right now, it's not, in my opinion, a great downtown core. Your cap rates are going to be a little bit higher than they are going to be, let's say, in a downtown Seattle area where there's a lot happening right now. Obviously, the big push up there is, with Amazon, and Amazon's put a lot of pressure on the office buildings and a lot of pressure on the apartment buildings and, the retail and all that stuff. So cap rates are interesting just from a macro standpoint, just to take a look at and really, really drill down on. But this particular person asked a great question, because you don't really need cap rates unless you're about ready to position to sell and or refinance. And so it's nice to know when you're sitting down with a bank and you're about ready to refinance, kind of what cap rates are, because then now you can have a healthy conversation with that particular lender about, where prices are trending and what's kind of going on in that market. So they're just an indicator of kind of how vibrant that market is at the time. And so we really like to take a look at cap rates. Now, with that being said, I can tell you that I've bought properties before that had no cash flow. In other words, they're what I would call value adds. And I think we talk a lot about those, and those properties don't have very good cap rates if you think about it, because they're not stabilized. So generally, cap rates are something that's on a stabilized property. So it's something that you want to look at, on a long-term basis after some kind of a remodel or a renovation or something like that, and you've kind of stabilized. And then you can kind of, use that as your own individual barometer. But when we decided to sell 10 properties this year, we had bought all these properties in the 6, 7, even 8% cap rate. And then we went down to one of the nation's largest brokerage companies, and we were packaging them all up, and they were in all different cities and all different states. We said, where do we think these properties will trade from a cap rate basis? And they said they think that they're going to trade under 5% cap. And after 1 year, and we had sold all of these, we ended up settling in at a 4.2 cap rate. And so it does mean something if you're selling. It does mean something if you're refinancing. It doesn't mean a lot if you're holding, but it's nice to know, because if an investor or let's say one of your investors or some of your equity partners want to kind of know what the property's worth, you have to use cap rates for that to be able to kind of calculate it. Now, I've talked about this a little bit, but one of the biggest things that you actually need to be concerned about with cap rates is what I call the exit cap rate. So there's a cap rate that you buy on, and there's a cap rate that you exit on. So let's say you're buying something for 2, 3, 5 years, and it's not necessarily a buy and hold strategy. If cap rates go, let's say, from 4 to 5%, let's say you buy at 4 and you're trying to sell at 5, that means that's a 20% loss in the net operating income as it relates to, it's just math. And so you would have to actually grow your net operating income if you're going to sell at a 5, at an exit 5, because that's just to break even. So the exit cap rates are really, really important, and cap rates are really, really important depending on the equity. So if you're going to go to Wall Street and borrow from big groups like Blackstone or Goldman Sachs, they understand what cap rates are. They understand what exit cap rates are. And so if you can't deliver that, if you can't show them that you're going to grow the NOI rapidly and aggressively, they might not invest with you because they're looking at the exit cap rate. So the exit cap rate is very, very, very important. Great question. I really appreciate it. Cap rates are something to watch, but if you're in a buy and hold strategy, sometimes it's just fun to see, how much your property's worth and whether you can harvest some equity out of it on a refinance. So great question. I really appreciate you guys listening to my show. And to learn more, I have an entire website dedicated to real estate education at kenmcelroy.com. And the price is just $14.99 a month. And you'll have access to hundreds of videos in the video library. So please visit kenmcelroy.com if you're interested in more education. A second question that was brought up was, and I talk a lot about this, is that I say don't focus on finding the investors, but focus on finding a good deal, and then investors will follow. And this is a common question. So this question came in a lot. And so I'm just going to walk you down my own personal journey, because what happens is the emotion side of anybody wants to say, hey, I need the money. Like when you're going to go buy a car, you know that you generally need some kind of a down payment. You're going to have to write a check for that. I get that. And same thing with you go to Costco or Target and you're buying a TV or something, you're constantly using your own money. So I want you to wrap your head around this a little bit better. You don't necessarily need money in order to buy real estate. So that's the big difference. And so this particular question is around investors. So think, in most cases, people are focused on their own money, what they have in the bank, and whether they can afford it. In this particular case, you're trying to find somebody else to put that down payment down. And so on my own story, when I first started my adventure, say 20 years ago, I went to friends and family. So I went to my rich uncle, who had done very well as a home builder, and he had started businesses. And I sat down with him and I said, hey, would you be interested in investing in some of my stuff? Now, he was by far the most gracious. I can tell you that everybody else I asked would basically say, of course, we'd be happy to take a look at whatever you have. And so it's something I understand that you guys need in place, and it's good for you to potentially go find people that may. But I can assure you, if you ask 20 people if they're going to invest, the chances of all 20 pulling through are super low. In fact, I would say that's probably just a handful of people. Most people aren't going to tell you no. Most people are going to say, oh, I'll look at that. I'll look at everything. And then there's a massive amount of work that has to be done. And so what I learned after meeting with my uncle was he said, listen, you're not going to raise money this way because there's nothing to talk about. It's just that basically you're saying, would you invest in me? because there is nothing else. It's just me, And so the question would be, do you have a team? Well, no. Okay. Do you have a property? No. Okay. What's my return be? I don't know, because I don't have anything to look at. And so what I try to teach people is that you need to go out and get yourself educated. You need to go out and find a deal. And once you find the deal, then at least you have a talking point. Because when investors invest, they invest in things. So if you're investing in a T-bill, let's say a government T-bill, you know the rate. If you're investing in a bond, you're doing it, you know the rate. If you're investing in some kind of debt product, you know the rate. So the investors are investing in things that they actually can see the return on. If you just go to somebody and say, hey, would you be interested in investing with me? Most of the time, they're going to say yes. Generally. And so most people aren't going to say, sorry, I'm busted right now. I don't have any money. Most people are always going to say yes. And so, but then when the rubber hits the road is when you actually bring them some kind of a business plan or some kind of a deal. So, and I'll give you an example. So I bought a 2-acre piece of land with a billboard on it. And it was listed, and it had been listed for 6 months. And so I said, because I'm in the billboard business, I was interested in the billboard more than the land. So I called my partner and I said, hey, we can buy this property, move the billboard, and sell the property for exactly what we bought it for. He said, done. Okay, that is an infinite return on a property that I actually did. That is a plan. It doesn't have to be all in writing, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But who doesn't want a billboard for free? So that's some kind of plan. And so when I just called my partner and we each just threw 50% of the cash in and bought it completely with no debt, we ended up buying this land and we got the billboard for free. And now the billboard's producing about $4,000 a month net. So for about $50,000 a year in cash flow, we got a billboard for free. Okay, who's not going to want to do that deal? Everyone's going to want to do that deal. That is a deal. That's something that somebody can get their head around. That's something that say, okay, how long is my money going to be invested in the deal? When am I going to get it back? What's my return going to be? Those are all the things that people ask. And if you don't have that information, then it's almost a waste of a conversation. So my suggestion is that you go out and look for deals and try to find the best deal you can, then go and pitch them to people. And that's actually where you'll get the most, your education will go up a lot, your experience will go up a lot, because they'll be asking you questions back about the deal. Some of it you'll know and some of it you won't know. And so the next deal, you're going to get a little better. Next deal, you get a little bit better. And each deal, you get a little bit better. But you actually have to have something physical. It can be anything. It can be a duplex that you live in one side and rent out the other. It doesn't really matter. It can be a condo that you have an Airbnb strategy with, and that is going to cash flow over time. But people need to be able to wrap their head around things before you actually ask them for the money. Even if you're not completely spot on, if you've done all the legwork and done all the research and you have all the information for them to make it appear like it's a good deal, and hopefully it is, and you've done a lot of that work beforehand, the chances of you raising money and getting investors is a lot higher. If I'm going to buy a vacant building just on a corner with an investor, there's no upside for the investor. But if I find that vacant building on the corner and I find a tenant while I'm in escrow, now I'm going and saying, listen, we're going to buy the building for $1 million. We're going to put a tenant in it, and that's going to increase the value to $2 million because it's cash flows. They can wrap their head around that. So just put yourselves in their shoes. If you're being asked to invest, what are the things that you look at? You look at the return. When am I going to get my money back? How secured is it? Is the management team sound? Does it have good property management? Is everything that they're saying is going to be done? Is it actually going to happen? What way is the market going? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So those are all the things that a good investor asks you. And so when you start with a deal and you bring a deal to somebody, especially sophisticated investors like my uncle, you're going to learn a lot because they're going to ask you questions and it's going to make you better and better and better. And that's how you raise money. And that's how you find investors. And that's how you find great deals to make yourself rich over a long period of time. So great question.